Greetings, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Chris Worden, and I'm joined, as usual, with Andy Jones-Wilkins. Andy?
Chris, good to be here.
Great to see
Good to
you.
be here back after a couple months. We were here for Javelina, and
Yeah.
now we're here for the Bandera 100K and the beginning of the 100K golden ticket season.
Absolutely. These races are going to get shorter in time over the next few weeks. Obviously, we've got a couple of quick ones coming up, but Bandera being the first 100K of the golden ticket season, we've got a lot to talk about. How was your New Year?
Oh, it was great. It was great. It was busy. We stayed here in Phoenix and had a bunch of kids in town, all three of our sons and our new daughter-in-law and grandmas. And in fact, we just sent the last child away, so we're back to empty nesthood with Shelly and I and the dog. How about you?
Well, I had, unfortunately, I was one of the victims of some of the holiday chaos. A certain airline found me staying an extra couple of days in the Chicago area, which isn't a bad thing, except, I had to get back in time for Across the Years.
Mm-hmm.
So, I paid more for a last-minute plane ticket than I would like, but I was back in time for ATY and, got to see everybody, that had come to town for that. And also knowing that it is, the turn of the calendar, and now it's time to look forward to 2023 and all the races.
How did ATY go for you?
Oh, I
know you were registered for the 6th day.
Yes,
you were on the board.
I had a bib.
You had a bib.
Yes. I did reach an ultra distance, but I have seen my numbers decline in 6 consecutive years. So I think I probably need to buckle down a little bit.
Time to raise that game.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So don't tell my coach, Pete Mortimer, otherwise I'll be in big trouble. But we are here to talk about Bandera. First of all, thanks to Westplate for providing us with these excellent shots of the 2022 race. You can really get a feel for the ground and the terrain. Looks kind of familiar, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I've never been out there, so I want to lead with that, Andy. I have no personal familiarity with the Bandera 100 course. And I'm also just, this is going to be the first time I'm helping to call a race that I've never been to. So I'm definitely going to have to defer to the expertise of you, Brett Hornig, Finn, and what you have to offer in terms of your knowledge of the course. Now, the field, I can kind of parse my way through. You see a lot of the same people. But I guess to lead off, what are your thoughts on the course and the potential? I'm sure you've seen some of the weather possibilities as well. This actually looks like it could be what we're looking at. So if you want to expand upon that.
The Texas Hill Country is unique, but you're right. It does have some resemblance to our desert environment here or other areas of sort of Oklahoma, some of the southern hills of Nebraska, sort of prairie land, but also some rocky. This So Tall plant, we could talk a little bit about it there. You see a little bit of it. That stuff can really trash your legs. But the course in and of itself, first of all, for folks new to the race, it's 100K, which is made up of 2 identical 50K loops, predominantly single track, kind of relentlessly rolling up and down, characterized by kind of 2 sections, a hilly section for the first 10K that's also pretty rocky, about 28 to 30K in that middle part that's relatively smooth and through the prairie and has more gently rolling up and downs, and then another about 10K section of more rolling hills, not quite as technical, in the last part of the first 50K. So if you're thinking through kind of the crux of the race, if you took those 2 10K sections and put them together, the final 10K of the first loop and the first 10K of the second loop, that's a 20K section of sort of technical rolling hills that can really, over the years, has separated runners, particularly at the front of the pack. So that's something I would see. If you can get to mile 40 relatively intact through the second time through the technical hilly rocky part, I don't want to say you're home free, but you're in good position to sort of make a move if you have the legs ready to make that move.
Okay, so it's the kind of race where you just kind of you want to typically stay within the pack or within a view of the lead, and then maybe you make your move in the second half.
Yeah, I mean, I think for both elite fields, they're going to want to maintain contact in the first loop especially. You see every year it seems like you see 1, 2, 3 runners going off the front, but often they can be reeled in. But you want to, I mean, it's likely to be a pack race, relatively small pack race, at least through that first technical section, through the rolling, flattish, smooth section. But I could see some gapping happen by, mile 25 into the start-finish area again. But you're going to want to stay close. I mean, since we have a couple people in the race that we'll talk about in a little bit that are notorious closers, I suppose you could have, depending on the conditions and the carnage, a couple of people who could be as far back as 30, 40 minutes and make a charge, but probably not more than that. And they'd probably need there to be a little bit of carnage.
Absolutely. One of the things that we talked about before we went on the air was something that had been mentioned by other people. Shout out to Liam, Aid Station Fireball on Twitter. I was reading up about how he said that there's really nobody that can negative split this course. We'll get to that in a few minutes because we have some common thoughts on that. But let's lead off with the women's field. My thought is that the women's field is very top heavy. I feel like there's a few names that seem to come up in all discussions, all of the other previews that we've talked to, the fantasy picks that I've heard. And there are some contenders, but I've only heard perhaps 3 names bantered about that people think could actually win this race on the women's side.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. It probably expands to 5 to 7 in terms of getting the golden ticket.
Sure.
I think if I were a mind reader, I would say that anybody who's come here and is that in that front edge is going for the golden ticket. We've seen people decline golden tickets at other races. I don't think that's the case at this year's Bandera. If they get it, they're going to take it. I think Courtney Dauwalter coming to Bandera for the first time is probably a headline.
Yes.
She wants to get back to Western States. She wants to run the Western States Hard Rock Double, which I look forward to talking to her about later because it's something I did years ago. But I think she's coming with her eye on getting that golden ticket, possibly winning. We know she doesn't usually run with a time goal in mind or anything like that, but she's going for that golden ticket. And if I were anybody else in the women's field, I'd be thinking, well, Courtney's the person to beat. That doesn't necessarily mean she's going to be off the front from the get-go, but I think she is the woman to beat. I think the return of Amanda Basham after 3 years, I believe, of having 2 children, 2 daughters. Amanda, of everybody in the field, I think men's and women's, has the most tried and true Western States experience. Even though Courtney has a win at Western States, Amanda has 2 fourth place finishes, and her running at Western States goes back at least half a decade. So she's clearly coming here with the golden ticket in mind, and I think is probably really curious about where her fitness is, where she might fit into something rolling like this. I think in 2020, which of course was a golden ticket that ended up not being a race that Western States didn't happen. But I think she did one loop and called it a day in 2020. So I think that'll be an interesting kind of subplot as we see. And Amanda is not afraid to go out hard. And then Nicole Bitter, she's coming off a really impressive close. Final 2 laps at Javelina.
15:30 or so?
Where she was, if it had been a 110-mile race, she probably wouldn't be here because she'd have her golden ticket already.
Yeah.
She was reeling in the field. She's a smart racer. We know this race is relatively close to Javelina, but I think Nicole probably can manage it. Will she negative split? I don't know. I mean, let's just say Courtney is in the sub 9 range, and Amanda and Nicole are battling in that 9:15, 9:20, 9:30 range. Conditions allow. I mean, it could be a real battle. But then I've got to say, as a Western States obsessive, my sentimental pick for getting a golden ticket somehow is Michelle Magagna. She was F11 at Western States in 2021. short of getting 4th place in the Olympics, I think there's no worse place to finish than 11th place at Western States. And so you've got to imagine Michelle, and we'll mention the men's field in a little while. Jeff Colt on the men's field, who was M11 in 2022, are here with that in mind as well. So between those 4 and then this dark horse, Catherine short distance, had a really good result in Canada earlier in the year, a really good race at the Canyons 50K. I think she's going to be in the mix as well.
Well, I think to reinforce what you said about Michelle Magagna, she also finished 8th here last year in a pretty stout field. So I like her chances to definitely be in the discussion till the very end of this race. I really do feel like this is Courtney's race in terms of where she's at right now. She's seems to be cutting back on the number of races she's doing, and kind of as she's getting older and wiser. And what she did at Grand Raid was just unreal to see. What kind of top off that she did on the previous women's course record. Obviously, that course varies a little bit from year to year, but to see what she did, it has to be her race unless something happens.
Right.
So,
well, and I'm interested to see how Courtney does for Courtney short race. I mean, she ran Madeira and won that, and that was incredible. But has been, her 2 big wins were races that take over 24 hours.
True.
Here she's going to be out there 8+. Maybe 9, but I think there are some in the sport who see that the gap to Courtney gets closer in the shorter
the race. Yes,
but we'll see. She chilled out for a while this winter, and I think is probably coming for Courtney undertrained, but also let's see how it goes. Let's see what happens. Now, that same thing could be a message to the Amandas and the Nicoles and the Michelles, where maybe this is an unknown Courtney, coming to a race in January and seeing if she can throw down and run with a little pressure. I mean, everybody thinks she's going to win.
Yes,
so everybody at that starting line is going to be knowing that. So it'll be fun to see a 4 short for Courtney race, how she does.
Absolutely. I think that we're in agreement as far as on the women's side. When I did say it was top heavy, I believe that we're looking at Courtney, Amanda, Nicole in some form or fashion for our top 3. I think that Michelle Magagna is probably right there as well, and it would not surprise me if she were to sneak in there and possibly even end up with a golden ticket. There are also some other names on the women's side that I'm less familiar with. I don't know if there was anybody that you might want to touch upon. I know that there were a couple, and I've got notes here, so I will be moving my eyes down to double check them. But was there anybody that we haven't discussed yet that you feel could be a contender?
Well, I think those 5 are the golden ticket folks. In my opinion, I mean, at least three of them would have to have a bad day, or someone else sneaks in.
True.
But at this point, I think it's really Courtney's golden ticket, and the 4 of them racing for the second one.
That makes sense to me. I think that's an excellent way to put it. There were, again, some other decent runners. I mean, I was looking at names and trying to cram for our pregame show as well as for our coverage on Saturday. Rachel Lemke has done some, solid results locally here. I believe she won McDowell Mountain Frenzy 50K last year, and then also finished top 5 at Run Rabbit Run among the hares last year. That's a pretty stout field every year because of the attraction to that race, being what it is. Yeah. So, I mean, if you're in the top 5, top 8 in that race, that you're a heavy hitter. So I think that Rachel is a name that could possibly sneak into that second place battle. Again, maybe I'm going to end up regretting it if something happens at that race where we're kind of disregarding the fact that anybody can win. But I guess I just keep gravitating towards the idea that, just based on what she's done over the past half a decade, that it is Courtney's race.
I also think, too, and this is the case with where we are with the schedule, and not a lot of people talk about this, but, there could be a number of runners in this field, below the top 5 that we've been thinking about, who are like, hey, if it's my day, I'll go for it. If not, I'll shut it down and come out here next month.
Yeah.
Or go to Canyons in April. Probably not go to New Zealand, in February. But there's 2 more golden ticket chances. I think what we see with each progressive golden ticket, at least of these North American 100Ks, Bandera is the one where you can sort of cherry pick one, and then you get the longest lead up to Western States. Black Canyon's the one that arguably has the most competitive group, depending on people from this race that drop out or save it for another day. And then you get Canyons, which is a beast compared to the other 2. By far the hardest of the 100K golden tickets, which, ends up being where you see the biggest surprises, like Jasmine Lowther last year, for example. So it's a really interesting kind of triad, and I think you're likely to see the fewest surprises and the fewest blow-ups that result in a finish. You might see some blow-ups where the person just calls it a day after 50K. So, I'm sticking to that. I'm sticking to that top 5, and I think condition-wise, it looks like there's a chance of rain. I think, I was talking to a buddy of mine in Texas earlier today. Chances of getting up into the 70s. We've got athletes coming from Colorado, athletes coming from Canada. I mean, would be no problem for us to run in the 70s, but the 70s with a little bit of Texas humidity. It's not Houston humidity, but a little bit of Texas humidity. Who knows what kind of impact that could happen on people? So I think those kinds of variables will come into play a bit, but probably not overwhelmingly in the grand scheme of who's going to come out of here with a golden ticket. And I also think we're going to see, as history has suggested, that getting a golden ticket at Bandera does set you up well for Western States. You can reboot, you can replan your schedule, you can recover from this and have a good 5-month buildup. A little bit less for Black Canyon, and of course much less for Canyons.
When you're talking about the conditions, and we're actually possibly going to be dealing with rain this weekend, do you think that is going to affect the placement of the runners, or do you think that maybe it's not going to? Are there going to be some people who are going to be more heavily affected by it than others?
I really don't think so. I don't think it's going to be a cold rain, like what we've just been through the last week here, or what you get sometimes out in the Bay Area or back east. I think it might be one of those warm, drizzly rains that Texas gets. So, I mean, it could make things a little bit muddy, but I don't see it having an impact on the outcome, especially given the experience of this group. I mean, it's kind of interesting. Javelina, we saw experience win out with Dakota and Devin, and I think there's a good chance, at least on the women's side here, we'll get to the men's side in a minute, that experience is going to win out.
Yeah, looking at the field, at least the top of the field, it's not like there are any people where, that it would be, I would be hard pressed to find somebody who I think would break through the list of the women at the top here. It's just so strong at the top.
It really is. And I mean, Amanda, the question mark on Amanda, notwithstanding, first time back racing in a number of years. Admittedly, she's fit, but she just doesn't know how it's going to go. But I mean, given where Nicole was at Javelina and given where Courtney is all the time, I mean, that's why I think for Michelle and Catherine, that's kind of it. I mean, if 2 of those 3 falter, which the chances are slim, but if 2 of those 3 falter, there's still those 2 right there. I think Michelle, I mean, her Kettle Moraine 16:30 something.
Excellent.
Just a couple weekends before Western States in June and typical Midwestern humid conditions. I mean, Kettle Moraine is not easy. It's got little technical bits. It's up and down all the time. It twists and turns. I mean, that's a good, solid 100-mile race that, she put on top of all her other stuff. I know she ultimately didn't make it out here for Javelina, but I mean, I think she's ready. And if somebody falters up there, I suspect she'll pounce. Not to mention, like I said already, there's a little extra drive when you finished 11th place in that thing.
That's true. You were literally the next person
there.
up.
You were the next person in line for that top 10. And there's no greater feeling than on the 4th Sunday in June, knowing what you're going to do the
next year. That makes a lot of sense. So, with a race like this, this almost kind of becomes, I don't want to say desperation, but I'm going to say desperation season for those that are trying to get, into Western States, because, the the top 10 from last year was already in. The lottery has taken place. The sponsors are kind of locked
spots
there
are
in.
already taken out.
So really, there are basically just a handful of spots, and this is the last series of races. This is 4 left between now and June, where people have their shot to claim a spot.
And they get increasingly competitive. Black Canyon already has a more competitive field, in my opinion, than this one.
Yeah.
There'll be some drops from that. And Canyon's, because it's a whole different type of race with so much more uphill. It's going to play to the different strengths of different runners. We saw really the mountain powerhouses do well there last year, and I think that's likely to happen. So if I was a potential golden ticket person right now, if I was a downhiller or a fast flat runner, I'd be running this or Black Canyon.
Okay. For those just tuning in, my name is Chris Worden. This is Andy Jones-Wilkins, and we are doing our Bandera 100K preview. We will be live streaming the race this weekend on the Aravaipa Running Channel. So we invite you to tune in. We're going to have some great hosts working with us. We'll have Skylar Hall. We'll have
Finn Melanson, Brett Hornig, and Leah Yingling out in the field.
Yeah, as well as Vivian Camille is going to be also in the studio with us as well. So we've got a pretty stacked field of commentators.
It's an exciting kind of fun thing we're doing. The idea was hatched a few months ago. Jamil is well connected with everybody in the sport, as we know, and reached out to the race directors of Bandera, and we're making this happen. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Jamil will be out there on the ground.
Yes.
Is that right? Maybe he's on his way now.
Yeah, Jamil is, I believe, on his way. Bryce, I was wondering if you would kind of be able to expand upon what the impetus was for Aravaipa to start to cover a race that isn't an Aravaipa race.
Yeah, so I know Jamil's vision has been to live stream all of the Golden Ticket races. I know he reached out to the race director, Tejas Trails is who the organizer is of Bandera. I want to say it was later last year, and so this has all kind of been a little bit last minute, but everything's coming together. We've got some sponsors, which is great, who are helping us put this on. But yeah, it's kind of, we're taking it on with Tejas Trails, and we're just going to make it happen.
For those of you who watched the Javelina coverage, the group of drone camera guys that Jamil affectionately calls the Utah crew, will be out there, right? Bryce, and they're part of the team.
Game On Studio.
Game On Studio.
So they specialize in live streaming like outdoor events, sporting events, and they do a really good job. So it's been an awesome connection for us.
That's a match made in heaven. That really is. Also, Bryce, if we could we get, over the course of the remainder of this show, kind of give a shout out to the sponsors for this weekend's live stream? Perhaps we can give them credit.
I'll get a full list for you. Yep.
Awesome. Thank you so much. With that, we have covered the women's field. We'll come back to our picks for golden tickets a little bit later, but let's just jump right into the men's field. To me, this men's field is extremely deep. It's not as top heavy as the women's field. In the women's side, I feel like there's 3 of the top 6 or 7 American female ultra runners in that field. The men's field has some of those names, but there are more like 15 or so people that could conceivably walk away with a ticket. And there are runners of all kinds. There are experienced runners. There's a couple that are making, some first-time attempts at 100K that are really going to be interesting. Some OCR type and some other, track star types and marathoners. There's a lot to unpack on the men's side. So let's just jump right in.
So I'll start with 3 stories that I think are golden ticket contenders that are stories on the men's side. Well, I've mentioned him already, Jeff Colt.
Yes.
Jeff Colt was M11 in 2022 at Western States, which he got from a golden ticket. Mm-hmm. I think he's an emotional favorite just for that standpoint from me. He's really experienced. He's raced around the world. He is a smart racer. He will be happy to let a front runner go. So the got 11th place story that we have with Michelle on the women's side is story number 1 on the men's side, and he'll be there. Number 2, I think this will be the first time that there is a person in the golden ticket race who is a Barkley finisher and a Hard Rock finisher.
Yeah.
And just last month, a sub 230 marathoner.
That's mind-blowing.
That's John Kelly. I don't think he'll come to Texas in an orange beanie and a garbage bag like he did at the Barkley. But I mean, what a story if John Kelly got a golden ticket to Western States after being a Barkley finisher, a Hard Rock finisher, and a sub 230 marathoner. So it's a story I'll be looking for and eager to see how it's going. His training, he can turn around and drop things on a dime and train flat and fast. So I wouldn't put anything past John Kelly. And then you mentioned 100-mile debut people. Chris Myers.
Yes.
Keep your eye on Chris Myers from LA. So I did a lot of running in Southern California back in the day, and Jorge Pacheco was the man out there. And there's a 50K called the Bulldog 50K that Jorge just crushed every year. Well, Chris Myers has run Jorge times, Jorge in his prime times at Bulldog. Bulldog has a lot of terrain like this. He also has 2 super fast Way Too Cools in the 330 range. So you've got stories right there. M11 from 2022, Barkley Hard Rock sub 230 marathoner, and this guy going over 100K, going to 100K for the first time after some blazing fast 50Ks. And those are just 3.
Yeah. Well, Chris Myers, I wanted to talk about him in specific. I saw him race out here at McDowell Mountain Frenzy.
Frenzy, right.
He ran the Frenzy 50K.
Just last month.
Yeah. Number one, he beat Nick Curry by 18 minutes in the 50K. And I know that it didn't seem like Nick was necessarily racing at his absolute peak because he was still getting ready for the Tucson Marathon the following weekend. But it's still Nick Curry in his backyard, literally in his backyard. And also, he beat a Rob Krar course record by a minute. That raises eyebrows tremendously. Now, I know that Chris is extremely fast. He's also won, I believe, the Black Canyon 60K here in the past. And he's extremely young, too. I want to say he's 26.
26.
So
yep, I looked that up.
This is going to be a huge coming out party potentially for Chris Myers. If he's able to maintain and race a 100K anything remotely close to what he's done at the shorter distances, we could be seeing a heck of a debut. Bryce, you actually raced that 50K as well. What did you see from Chris Myers when you saw him on the course at McDowell?
I can tell you I didn't see him much, Chris.
He's that fast.
Yeah, he took off real fast. I mean, after I had my eyes on him for maybe the first 5K of the race, and then he was just flying.
And he came in all smiles too when he was done. He looked fresh as a daisy. So I think that he's going to be a very interesting person to watch in this race.
I mean, we could see the beginning of an explosion of a guy bursting onto the scene, sort of Walmsley-esque.
I was thinking
with
that.
Myers. I mean, because 50Ks, especially the local and semi-local ones that he's done. Obviously, he came out here for Black Canyon 60K, but to go to Bandera and do something like that, and then obviously he would go to Western States. He'd probably do some kind of a tune-up, before Western States at some high-profile race somewhere. I mean, we could potentially see that. You could also be like, he calls it a day after one lap and lives to fight another day. Maybe comes out to Black Canyon next month or something like that. So I think it's a fascinating story. Not quite as fascinating as the triathlete who came to Javelina. Tell me her
Heather Jackson.
Heather Jackson.
Yes.
But sort of could be a kind of game changer type thing like that. So I think there's 3 stories right there. Now, who do you got? You got that 104 half marathon guy?
Are you talking about the Marshall coach?
Yes, yeah. What's his name?
It was
He's got a 104 half and some other blazing fast times. Do you have Skylar's cheat
believe
sheet?
I've got Skylar's cheat sheet, and I've got my cheat sheet, and between that we've got plenty of cheating going on. Let's see. That would be Caleb Bowen. Well, Caleb Bowen also, he ran...
no, he's different guy, but didn't he do a sub 13
he did a 1240 at Canal Corridor.
Yeah.
But and that 1240 was an hour faster than Arlen Glick's time. Mm-hmm. So Caleb Bowen is another name to look at on this field. That's one of the names that It's not right at the top of my list, but it's definitely one to consider. Kind of piggybacking around to what John Kelly did, and you talked about how John Kelly, obviously Barkley finisher, and then running a 2:30 marathon. There's another guy in the field that's got that same breadth of talent, and that's Stringbean.
Yeah.
I mean, Stringbean, FKTs of hundreds of miles. Cocodona shattered the course record, albeit on a different course, still moved extremely well, and also was a 4:12 miler in college. I mean, this is a guy who can handle any distance, any terrain. Has come out here and finished 4th as well at Haviland 100. So I'm curious to see what Stringbean does in this course.
Has an incredible history of almost golden tickets.
That's true too.
Lake Sonoma, Black Canyon. I mean, he has had so many close calls with golden tickets that you got to imagine one of these days he's going to get it right.
Yeah, absolutely. And it could be this race. If not, it'd be curious to see where he ends up from here. But he's definitely in that discussion and on the short list for my picks as well. Another guy I've seen run multiple times, Ryan Montgomery, blazing fast at Haviland 100 a couple years ago, falling just behind Arlen Glick, and got the golden ticket in 2021, but did not race this year. I can't say with 100% certainty but I think he was hurt or was playing, being cautious, and that's why he didn't race Western States this past year. I would have loved to have seen what he could do out there. I saw him also at Desert Solstice in a duel with Nick Curry a couple years ago. It was the year before Nick actually set the American record. I believe it was 2020, where Ryan and Nick basically had been, left for dead at mile 140, maybe about 21 hours in, and then Ryan got up and he did, without exaggeration, an 8-minute lap around the track. And Nick is watching him. And then Ryan went from 8-minute lap to 3-minute lap to 2-minute lap to running 145s, 140 plus miles in. And so I've seen Ryan personally have that grit too. So I'm really curious to see what he does here. He's an extremely fast, extremely talented runner. And I think that this is going to be a good weekend for him.
Well, you've now mentioned Nick a couple of times.
Yes, that's
I've got Nick on my short list.
Yeah.
Bigger question as to whether or not he gets a golden ticket or not. I mean, it's a lot of stuff has to happen.
Sure.
Does he negative split Bandera?
Yes.
Does he become the first person in sort of the modern era to negative split Bandera?
I think that he actually does, because Nick is so particular. I've obviously seen Nick race dozens of times. I've seen him do Desert Solstice. I've been, in his crew at Hard Rock, not crewing him, but been with them as they're handling him. He is so meticulous and sticks to his plan. So even if he sees people getting out ahead, he's going to stick to what he's doing. And what we're going to have to follow, because we know for a fact he's not going to be one of the first 5 or 10 people through that first loop. We're going to have to see how far back he is, because it's entirely conceivable that he could be within 12 to 15 minutes back. If he's that close to the front of the pack, they're in trouble. If he's more 20 to 25 or more back after the first loop, then he's in trouble. Because while he will gain on them in the second loop, assuming everything holds to form, it's just that he is going to do what he's going to do, and everybody else is going to know what he's doing. It's just a question of whether or not they can, adapt or hold off or just run their own race.
Ooh, you guys, we do have an update.
Oh.
Thank you to Brett in the chat for bringing this up. Nick is actually crossed off of the entrance list on Free Trail Fantasy, apparently posted a Strava.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know if he's going to be running Bandera this year.
That is a stunner, to be honest.
Yeah.
He was obviously, somebody we'd been really looking forward to talk to, a friend of ours as well. Yeah. So, in the interest of full disclosure, but
thanks for that update, Brett.
Thank you, Brett. Appreciate it. Looking forward to hanging out with you this weekend. We might have to do drinks on Friday.
That's right. So on the opposite side of Stringbean, having all these close calls of golden tickets, we also have the golden ticket master, which is Charlie Ware.
Yep.
And Charlie has been really below the radar. I think he's a new father, if I'm not mistaken. I
just
moved
away from Tucson.
And moved away from Tucson. But a really smart runner, knows what he's doing, knows his limitations. I still look at that 2021 Zane Grey time that he ran that was just insane. So if the golden ticket Charlie Ware shows up, I'd be worried if I were among that field.
So the golden ticket Charlie Ware, I believe, shows up every other year.
Yeah, he does.
So I think that it's on this 2022-23 cycle where he would, in theory, be showing up.
Yeah.
Now, and the cool thing about Charlie is that it's not just like one race. He's done it at multiple races. Like he's gotten the golden ticket at Black Canyon. I believe did he get one at Bandera as well? A few years back.
Yeah.
Charlie has
Maybe Lake Sonoma even. When it was a golden ticket race.
What, that might have been it.
Yeah.
He he's just so talented, and also has an eighth place finish at Western States as well. So he's gotten back in through that fashion as well. So I think that Charlie Ware is definitely a contender for a golden ticket in this race. I mean, he just seems to rise up whenever the opportunity arises. So, but there are several other interesting.
Who else do you see there on like the fast guys?
Brian Curl, who was out here at McDowell Mountain Frenzy 50 miler, which was a very competitive race simply because there was a somewhat of a sponsorship on the line for the people who won, and to come away from a strong field like that and win, the 50-mile race and a fairly rugged one with a nice hefty climb, in the second half up Thompson Peak. That's a fast runner. So, I could see Brian being one of those people that we might have to be talking about later in the race. Another one that we could be looking at is, I believe it was, I didn't realize I just heard Anna Mary actually withdrew.
He withdrew, yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, we've got a fairly stout field where it wouldn't surprise me if any of like 8 to 10 people did end up on that golden ticket trip to Western States.
I think the crux of the men's race will be that 20K section I mentioned, the last 10K of the first loop and the first 10K of the second loop. I think if you get to mile 40 and you're in range, there will likely be some carnage before
there always is.
But
Absolutely.
if you're like a Chris Myers, right, who's this super fast 50K guy so far, he makes it there and he's in the front or in the mix. I think, provided he plays his nutrition right, I think that's where the race is going to go down.
Well, we've got multiple people with other canyons, or I mean not canyons, but Bandera top 5 finishes. Like Miguel Medina, has finished 4th there. I believe it was in 2021. Anthony Lee got 5th at Canyons last year. I mean, just missing out on a golden ticket there.
He's been training well too. I checked out his Strava the other day. Anthony Lee is coming to play.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There are so many names that we could be seeing, there when all is said and done. But yeah, it's such a varied field as well because, when you talk about, on one hand, you've got the jacks of all trades when it comes to somebody like String Bean or John Kelly. And then you've got, these other guys that just seem to have a knack for it, like Charlie Ware.
Yeah.
It's going to be really interesting to see how things break down. So with that in mind, golden tickets, yes.
Well, I mean, let's start with the women. My emotional, sentimental favorite of Michelle Magana, notwithstanding, I'm gonna go chalk and say it's Courtney and Amanda. Courtney and Amanda get them and they take them, and Courtney goes on to win Western States and Amanda goes on to get back in the top 10.
I am almost there with you. I've got Courtney number 1. I do have Nicole Bitter at number 2. I think that she races with a little bit of a chip on her shoulder after Javelina, and maybe that pushes her over. I haven't seen enough from Amanda Basham recently to say that, whereas I have seen Nicole, and maybe that is a recency bias, admittedly. But when you see somebody drop a 15 and change at Javelina 100, that they're primed. I mean, that's long enough time that the body can recover. And I've also seen Nicole do that turnaround where she's done, I believe I've seen her do the 100K at Javelina and then turn around and do Solstice. So this is even more time and a shorter race on the back end. So I think that Nicole is going to be ready. I do believe that Amanda Basham comes in 3rd, and I think that we're both in agreement. Michelle Magana Probably just
Misses
comes
it
in.
again.
Yeah, but the season is long, at least for
Course record with Courtney here, and
I do believe it was like 9:15 or so. I could see that. I could definitely see Courtney. I mean, after what she did did last month, I think that's very fair.
Yeah, I don't think she's thinking about it, but I think she gets it.
Yeah. I could agree with you on that. On the men's side, I'm going with Ryan Montgomery. I think that Ryan is a smart racer, and he wants to get back to the Western States that he never got a chance to race last time. So I think that Ryan is the first golden ticket. The second is Charlie Ware. He just does it. I don't have any sort of, extreme insight into it. I just know that every time I seem to think that Charlie's quiet, he ends up, on a podium or on a golden ticket. And then I've got String Bean just missing out as well.
Just missing again.
So, yeah.
So Charlie Ware gets it again.
Yeah.
And String Bean misses it again.
Yeah, I think that when we talk about these people who are talented at all distances, String Bean's another one where the longer the race goes, the harder he's going to be to beat. Whereas I think this might just be a little bit too short for him, because I felt like that at Haviland 100 a couple of years ago in 2021 when he was there, and I think he finished fourth. I mean, it's weird to say that 100 miles is too short or 100K is too short, but it's too short for him to really unleash how amazing he is of a runner. So,
all right. Well, I'm going a completely different direction than you, and in fact, I'm jumping to the other side of the traditional AJW boat, which is always siding with experience and wisdom and having done the distance. Chris Myers is taking it.
Really?
Not in a course record. He's not going to run Walmsley time. He's probably going to be 15 minutes ahead at the end of the first loop and barely hang on for a 3-minute win. But I think Chris Myers takes it. I think that speed and that get out and go gets it done for him. So it's a golden ticket at the beginning of an all-world year. I think I'll then be interested to see how his build-up goes, what his next tune-up race is before Western States. But I have Myers taking it. And then, in contrast to Michelle, I'm going with Jeff to use that M11 magic and get the golden ticket with second place and punching his ticket and hopefully getting 9th or 10th place at Western State, so he doesn't have to do this again. And then I think John Kelly slides in number 3. Not that I don't want Charlie Ware to keep the sort of Charlie Ware golden ticket magic going and dad power and all that, but I really think John Kelly's going to take the third and really kind of paint an interesting picture in his overall ultra running resume.
We couldn't have been more different on our men's side. But that's one of the beautiful things about this sport. I love covering trail and ultra running. I have become a super fan, a groupie of my own. I feel fortunate, this is so much more fun than calling high school basketball. Let me tell you, it's something I used to do back in the day doing high school sports. I have so much more fun covering trail and ultra running simply because you're not beholden to, sticking to one script. I mean, when we're doing these races and we're doing this coverage, a little bit of a peek behind the curtain, we get to kind of go in any direction we want, and we can get like way out there. Like, one of the cool things about coverage that lasts this long is that we're able to kind of get to know the runners on a different level. Whereas, if you're doing a faster paced sport, in terms of, a clock or something like that, you kind of have to stick to what's right in front of you. Whereas it's hurry up and wait when it comes to trail and ultra running. You're like, oh man, I hope we get them as they come through this aid station. And then we kind of have to, see who else comes through the aid station, who comes across our viewfinder, whether we've got the drone coverage, whether we've got boots on the ground cameras or static cams somewhere. There's never any telling like how long or how stilted some of the runners are going to be. There's no tried and true amount of coverage that we can get, within certain time frames. So, I mean, we have guesstimates, we have, expectations. Like, for instance, we can assume that the men's race is probably going to go about 8 hours, give or take, and that the women's might go about 9, maybe a little bit less. But when it comes to, during the race, we're just kind of along for the ride with everybody else. And that's one of the cool things, is that we're able to look at what we're seeing in terms of athletes and kind of get to learn. I'm sitting on my laptop the entire time learning more about some of these people, beyond what they're doing, in front of us right now.
Well, and I think this is an indication too of the wonderfully imperfect nature of our sport.
Absolutely.
Right? We named 9. So our women's podium is the same with the second and third flipped.
Yeah.
Our men's podium is 6 guys.
Couldn't be more different.
So let's just take those 9 people. I'd say the over-under is that 4 of them will not be there.
Yeah.
Right? In some way, shape, or form, 4 of them will not be there. Neither of us are probably going to nail our podium for either one, even though we had the same podium for the women's race.
Yeah.
Furthermore, this is the time of year when there's all kinds of unknowns. People have come out of the holidays. They've come from cold climates to warm ones. Maybe their travel gets disrupted or anything else. But it's also that exciting time. It's almost like, I'm a big baseball guy. It's almost like pitchers and catchers report next week, to spring training. We're not quite there yet. But when you get into this golden ticket season, which is, in my view, going back to the Montreal Ultra Cup and the traditional golden ticket season, I know it's changed, and for good reason. When the UTWT went away, there was certainly a need for expanding the series internationally to allow runners in Europe and Africa and Asia to qualify for Western States, and to expand it beyond January to April. But this is the golden ticket within the golden ticket,
yes,
which are these 3 North American 100Ks that draw a lot of eyes, in Texas, in Arizona, and in California, and that bring out that sort of what happens every year with the buildup and the excitement and the growth. Yes, those who got their spots at Javelina, Dakota Jones and Devin, they can just sit back and eat their holiday cookies and watch the coverage, and they don't need to worry. They can train. They don't have to run another race until the end of June. But these athletes are in a different boat, and those that are on our list that don't make it, they might be like, okay, honey, we got a plan to go to Black Canyon, or we got a plan to go to canyons, because I still want to go after this. So I mean, it's that hope springs eternal time in the season that just really gets me excited. And so it's fun that Jamil and Aravaipa have reached out to people like Tejas Trails and to put it out there. We'd like to provide coverage, live stream coverage for every golden ticket race. What an ambitious goal. And we may not do every race this year, but I mean, the idea of it is so exciting. And when you see the excitement, I mean, when I saw the excitement on Devin and Dakota's faces when they clinched those golden tickets, or Arlen last year, I mean, it's something really palpable. And as talented, we'll see it if Courtney, and it goes by script, she gets her golden ticket. I mean, most people are like, why does Courtney even have to try for a golden ticket? Can't they just give her one? No.
Yeah.
She has to earn it like everybody else.
Yeah, that's one of the cool things, is that, through the course of the next few weeks, the next, I believe, 11 weeks, we're going to see these last few spots at Western States claimed by some unbelievable athletes having some unbelievable performances. But we've also seen in years past, there have been situations where, runners are, having to hunt and chase down repeatedly. Senseman a couple of years ago, I believe, basically went to every, race on the calendar until he finally got his ticket to run into Western States one year. I know that there was another year where Mako came and would have, he got his ticket at Bandera, then came back at Black Canyon the following month, and then finished in a ticket position to push it down one slot too. This season is really the fastest moving, no pun intended, when it comes to, following the trail and ultra scene. From here and through June, this is the exciting time.
Well, and also, I mean, I guess most of us could agree that last year, the year 2022, was for the most part a normal year, post-pandemic.
Yes.
Although you remember the initial Omicron was running rampant in December, January, in Bandera time and so forth. Not that we're completely out of the woods yet, but when we look ahead to 2023, it looks like it's going to be a normal year. And in that sense, the bringing together of the community in ways that we really celebrated last year. And, these live streams are a way to do it. We love to engage in the live chat with people who are watching at home. We love to engage with people like Brett who are like, hey, just found out Nick scratched, like we find that stuff out in real time. That's the beauty of the community. And I think we're going to see in 2023, as the excitement of these fast runners coming into the sport, the cagey veterans like Courtney, who really wants to get a Western States Hard Rock double. I mean, we're going to see those visions, maybe come to fruition and maybe not, and celebrate all along the way.
That's one of the cool things you mentioned, talking about Brett, like basically, chiming in. This is interactive. Like, we are glad to hear from our viewers and our supporters. Like, if you've got things you want to say, contribute, the chat is right there for you. Just as long as you keep it clean, keep it polite, and be nice. It's a great community. It's an inclusive community, and not everybody that is participating in the chat is necessarily a big time runner. Some of them are just fans, and that's one of the cool things. I've actually gotten to know a few of the people that follow our live streams simply because they tune in on a regular basis, and they reach out even when we're not on the air, and I might hear from them on Twitter or Instagram. So I'm grateful to hear from all of them.
If I could offer up something, and I didn't intend to talk about this, but I think it's a good time as any. We had a challenge during the Javelina coverage, with respect to the competitor Riley Brady,
yes,
who identifies as non-binary.
Correct.
And there were some challenges that we faced in real time in the way we at the desk were reading the results and the way the results were coded with male, female, and non-binary, and really understanding in real time the difference between Riley identifying as non-binary and being a competitor in the female race.
Yes.
And it took me a long time to figure that out. I got back to the race the next day and sat and talked to race director from Western States, Craig Thornley, talked to Jamil, talked to Jubilee about it. Because it was live and in real time on the live stream, I made some mistakes in whether I said the correct pronoun in referring to Riley as they in the moment. But the beauty of the community was, as time went on and people understood what was going on and the challenges that we faced, we all learned from it.
Absolutely.
While in the moment, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm screwing this up. In the context of it, I was learning. And of course, Riley handled it with incredible grace and was understanding. And they are going to Western States, in full excitement for the event. But that's an example of how, interacting in real time on something like the live chat can make the sport better. And I haven't really thought about it in the way to say it until just now.
Yeah.
But when you were talking about how you've made friends through the live stream and how, it's something that's live and in real time, it was something that really impacted me emotionally. I talked to my sons about it, who are much more in tune with, the way young people think about things these days than I necessarily was in that moment. And it just turned into a teachable moment for so many of us that I'm incredibly grateful for it, and grateful for the community that was there that evening to help me through that.
Yeah, and I think that people understood fairly quickly that you were striving to learn, and you were striving to understand and make sure that you were respecting everyone, and it was a bit of a rolling on the fly kind of situation. We were learning, like you said, in real time. We were not having any sort of, prior or, off the air discussions about it. We basically were rolling and trying to find our own way in response to, what information we were learning as we went along. So, it was definitely a learning experience. We find every live stream that we do of some length has some learning involved.
Right, and it was illustrative for me, right? I'm 55 years old. I've been in ultra running since the early 90s. I used to think I knew it all. Obviously, I don't, right? And I think moments like that and experiences like this and doing the live stream in a new way that we're going to do on Saturday with multiple hosts with, it's one thing to be here in the studio and have the race, 45 minutes up the road. It's
Yes.
another thing to have it, a several hours flight from here. So we will learn stuff on Saturday, no doubt about it.
Oh, this is going to be a huge learning experience for me because, as I said, I've never been to that course. And, I've never called an event where I don't have extensive firsthand information. So apologies in advance. It might be a bit of a wild time for me. Bryce, do we have some questions that we could possibly address here?
Yeah, let me go through the chat here real quick. I know we had some initially. We had Lottie Brinks in the chat earlier talking about Kareth Brinks, who is going to be running the 100K at Bandera. I believe it's her sister-in-law. She's got a stout 50-mile PR.
Oh,
according to Lottie.
And what is her sister?
Careth, Kareth Brinks.
Kareth Brinks. Might have to be a name that we have to scribble into our crib sheets for this weekend. Because frankly, that's definitely if Lottie's giving some props,
it's probably a good recommendation.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
definitely somebody we might have to add to our coverage. Again, luckily we've got 8-9 hours, so we'll be able to cover dozens of athletes along the way. So it's one of the best parts about this sport is that we're able, and there are going to be invariably people who maybe aren't expected to be at the front of the pack coming out and kind of hanging with that lead pack.
Mm-hmm.
And every year there's always some guy from from some college team in from somewhere that ends up like hanging with the lead pack at Boston for a few minutes just to be on camera. Like maybe that's what happens at ultras. Maybe somebody comes darting out to see if they can hang with the with the lead dogs at this race, and either they find out the hard way, or we find a new star in the making.
That's right. I do encourage viewers to engage in the live stream. I know that's something that's very important to Bryce and Matt and Jamil, that we pride ourselves on it being an interactive experience. So if you tune in Saturday morning, wherever you are, we're going to go on the air at 6 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. The start time, Texas time, is 7:30 a.m. We'll go on at 6 and start the race starts at 6:30, and we'll stay on the air all the way through at least the women's podium.
I guess Matt Feldake was giving us a little bit of grief for not matching our outfits.
Oh, was he?
Yeah.
We'll do that on Saturday then.
Absolutely. I will probably throw this back on again. Throw it in the wash.
I'll grab mine, and I love these.
This is the best shirt.
It is a really nice shirt.
It is great. For those of you that haven't seen these shirts, they're really sharp. They're hooded, so you can avoid the sun. And then also on the back, there's in this case, it's the Heavily 100 design. So, I'm happy to represent. So, is this
These are our gracious sponsors for the Bandera live stream this year. So.
Oh, excellent.
Well, let's give them a shout out. Adventure Pod, is that
that's
Jonathan?
That's David and Megan Roach's, I think.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Some Work All Play. Yep. That's wonderful of the Roaches to put some energy behind this.
Catula. Pizza Clutta. Have you had Pizza Clutta
Oh
before?
my goodness, yes.
Okay.
Caleb's restaurant up in Flagstaff. Yes, at the Rob Carr Ultra Camp, we go to Pizza Clutta every year. The second night, we get our own table, and yes, outstanding pizza, worth the trip to Flagstaff.
And also, basically, the see and be seen of the ultra running scene in Flagstaff.
Yes.
Like if you're ever in Flagstaff and you want to see the greats of the game out for dinner on any night of the week, really, Pizza Clutta is where you do it.
Absolutely. Is that Jonathan Levitt's
I believe
podcast
so, for the long run?
pod?
Awesome.
Jonathan Levitt's podcast. That's wonderful.
I saw that he was involved
That's
with
great.
the live
and
stream.
I'm not familiar with that one. Run, Try, Bike.
They're actually a magazine.
Magazine.
Oh,
All right.
Yep.
Sweet.
Yep. They've got some really cool articles on the website. I was browsing through it earlier today. We did
Well,
have
huge thank you to those 5 sponsors for making the live stream possible. It's it takes a village, as we say, and this is a great example of it.
Absolutely. This sport, seeing the coverage grow is great. It's not exactly what we'd call a huge revenue sport. It's a niche of a niche.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when was the last time you saw significant, long distance running on TV, let alone like trail running? So the barriers to entry have come down with, platforms such as YouTube, and also it doesn't have a huge audience, but it has a rabid one.
Absolutely. And the technology and expertise of people like Jamil and the Utah crew are allowing us to experiment. In many ways, this is still a grand experiment. Some things will go wrong on Saturday. We'll have blurry stuff. The screens will freeze. We know that will happen. But with each successive experience, we'll grow from it and learn from it.
Yeah. It looks like... Okay, do we want to talk about what the question was that you just answered?
Yeah, so the question was, did you guys figure out the cell phone coverage out there? No, there's no cell phone coverage for the most part on that course. So what we're doing is we're bringing out Starlink. I think that's going to be how we broadcast remotely from Bandera. So that's kind of the solution. It's came about in the last couple of years, and it's been absolutely huge for the quality of our live streams.
Yeah, Starlink has been a game changer because, prior to that, we were really at the mercy of cell phone coverage and towers. And for even a race such as Javelina 100, where you're not out in the middle of nowhere, it was always like, hey, Amy, can you can you get back to the top of the hill? We're losing you as you head down into Jackass Junction. Like, those were literally conversations we would have with people, while we were on the air. Starlink, mitigates a lot of those issues, so we've got a lot better coverage. It's not the end all be all. We're not able to always have, crisp, clear, perfect coverage, every single stretch of the course, but it definitely makes these live streams viable and possible.
That's right. Yeah.
So one of the things that we're hoping for, talking about the weather, I believe we're looking at this, you said the 70s, and
could get up into the low 70s, as I saw that this morning, and a chance of showers.
Well, I'm hoping that the rain stays away.
Yeah.
Because
for coverage purposes.
Absolutely. if there's rain, then the drones don't fly. And that would be a darn shame, because I'm really looking forward to. I saw that West Plate, again, shout out to West Plate for his video from last year's Bandera race. And, looking at those trails, I'm really excited to see more of them as we do the coverage, because they really do look like a lot of fun. Like I said, they remind me a lot of what I, see out here in our own backyard in the Black Canyon Trail. And, if we're able to get those drones in the sky because the weather cooperates, it's going to make for some excellent coverage.
Well, and I think it's also going to be fun for us in the studio. We're rotating through 6 different commentators with various shifts and so forth. So you'll hear, those of you tuning in, will hear, you won't hear the same voice droning on for 12 hours. We'll switch it up and have different partnerships going together and so forth. So it should be fun and engaging, and a good kickoff to our domestic 100K golden ticket season.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I'm looking forward to with this is, obviously, we're going to have some new blood in the studio that we haven't had before. And frankly, I'll be honest, Andy, I'm looking to step away for like a half an hour to an hour, so you get some time with some partners that you haven't worked with before. I think that it would be kind of cool as we kind of just rotate in and out. I'm a big
Just
proponent.
If you step away, keep an eye on the live chat.
I will absolutely be. I will still probably be in the room or one room over. But I'm a big fan of the more people that we have involved in the coverage of the sport. We're still cultivating talent, that's the phrase I've been using. We're still learning who is out there in terms of, ultra coverage. I mean, these are people that we haven't I haven't seen, do coverage before. And, as far as I know, in some of their cases, it's their first time. I know we discovered Vivian through her YouTube channel and through Instagram posts that, and coverage that she had done of other races. I believe she's run Bandera multiple times and has top 10 finishes in the 2 times that she's run it. So I'm looking forward to seeing what she has to say. I think that, she's an excellent resource. And to get to have Brett and Finn in the studio as well, I can't wait to defer to them and rotate in and out.
Finn is one of the most prolific podcasters in the sport. I mean, gone are the days of the weekly podcast. He's putting up daily podcasts.
Yes.
So I mean, and it'll be fun to see for him and for Brett making that transition, and the third in their group, Leah, who'll be on the ground in Texas, and we'll see how that goes. But I suspect we'll have some on the ground reporting from her as well. So it'll be a lot of fun. No
Absolutely, and hopefully, if we happen to do more coverage of golden ticket races this spring, as much fun as I have in the studio, I volunteer to go and do the camera coverage at Tarawera. if that's in the budget,
if one of these sponsors can buy your ticket to New Zealand,
exactly. I'm willing to
you'll take one for the team.
Exactly. Yeah. So just in case. Anybody is interested, I will definitely step away from the studio and be happy to be holding a camera.
Well, and of course, since it's a backyard race, we will be providing the stream for Black Canyon again.
I will be racing Black Canyon.
You're racing Black Canyon.
Yeah, I gotta get
excellent.
I gotta get my lottery ticket. I look for different tickets than we cover here on this race, so I'll be going for my
well, that'll
6th
be
year.
Good. We can get some footage of you out on the course.
Yeah, last year they got footage of me after I dropped out. It wasn't pretty. So hopefully you have footage of me about 16 and a half hours in, cursing my life and but still actually eligible.
Getting across the finish line.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So do we have any other questions, Bryce? Are we
Not that I'm seeing.
Okay.
All right.
Well, if there's nothing else, I think we will adjourn until Saturday morning, bright and early. I believe that's 6:30 our time. So
6 a.m. our time, which is 7 a.m. Central Standard Time, which is what Bandera is in right now. So 7 a.m. Texas time, 6 a.m. Arizona time.
Okay, so
grab your coffee. We'll come on and jabber for half an hour before the start, and then get it going.
I'm looking forward to it.
Exactly. All right.
All right. Thanks a lot, everybody, for tuning in.
Thank you, everybody.
We will see you Saturday.